Hi, this is Matt. Once again, we're about to another video. This is another paid request for Ryan. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested, requests in any type of videos, would be a topic, tier list, ranking, movie review, re-review, thoughts, streams, commentaries, whatever the case may be, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal. Do have a Cash App as well, and links are down below in the info box. And for those who send them, thank you. I'm trying to get to them as soon as I can. But I really do appreciate your generosity and your patience. Thank you for that. And this is a request Ryan sent for a film called Lenny from 1974, which is about the comedian Lenny Bruce. Now, Lenny Bruce is a comedian I had heard of, but to be honest, I never saw his act. I mean, he passed away, 1966, so well before my time. I didn't really see much of him on, reruns. Like, he wasn't really talked about. Like, no one I knew talked about him when I was a kid, let alone, throughout the early years. It wasn't until the internet age where I heard a bit where a lot of comedians talked about how much they respected or how much they cheered or how much they liked. I think Joe Rogan's one of them that really talked about how important Lenny Bruce was, about free speech, and pretty much the deal with Lenny Bruce was he was really one of the first guys to do stand-up comedy and, for example, say the word cocksucker. But then he was arrested for obscenity charges because you were not allowed to talk about stuff like sex, use the F word like fuck. Nowadays, I mean, you could find a stand-up, you could find Andrew Dice Clay from the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, tons of comedians that, like the way how they tell stories, like Richard Pryor, George Carlin. That's kind of what Lenny Bruce was doing before those guys. And some people say he was a bit ahead of the curve. If he had been around, 10 years later, he could have really capitalized on it. But as is, he became kind of a martyr for free speech. Now, he also had a lot of demons and stuff within himself. He died of, I think, morphine addiction or overdose. I think it was morphine in 1966. And, ups and downs of his life. But the film is directed by a guy named Bob Fosse, who is known for dance choreography. Now, before this, he had done, I think it was called Cabaret. He did a film that won a lot of prestige. I think he even won Best Director over, I think he won over Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather, which people thought was a shoo-in. I think that's the case. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. But I think he won like an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Grammy, which is unheard of to win it all in the same year. Pretty much found success, and he was able to do whatever movie he could. And this was one of them. And while this is a film no one really talks about, it was successful at the box office. It was nominated for like all 5 of the major awards: Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Picture. But it didn't win any. It stars Dustin Hoffman as Lenny Bruce. You have Valerie Perrine. I always think of her as Miss Tessmacher from Superman, the movie, Superman 2. I can't help it. Anytime I say Miss Tessmacher, I want to say just like Gene Hackman did. She plays the wife, and later on ex-wife, of Lenny Bruce. It's told in a scattered fashion, non-linear, where it'll go like different places of his life, where this will be early in his career, then he's later, but then we're about to early, then we're about to later. And at times it's told in like a pseudo documentary style where the ex-wife or someone else is being interviewed. I'm not sure how I felt about it being done that way, because it did feel scattershot. I'm sure that's meant to be much more artistic. But while it did make me learn and appreciate a bit about what Lenny Bruce was doing in his monologues of stand-up, which to me are the most interesting parts of the film, is him doing the stand-up and being upfront and talking about sexuality or homosexuality and being kind of a defender of the people that go through that, getting berated for that, about race, where there's this bit where he would say the N-word a few times. But then he goes, what else do we have? We have this, and he says, we have this. So he says the slur for Italians, the slur for Jewish, the slurs for Hispanics, and in the NIG, I'm not going to, the WOP, like all this. I'm not going to say the words, but he says it all. It's like, well, we got everybody here. And he keeps repeating it, and the point is that he keeps repeating the words so they lose their power, so they're suppressed. Because if, tomorrow Kennedy said we got a bunch of blah 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 here, we need to keep using it in order to give it less power, so that if a kid does hear it, then they won't feel as ashamed or as sad or as angry about it. Which I get the point that he's trying to make, but easier said than done. And much easier said than done, I'll put it that way. I mean, if talk about cancel culture, you have the cancel culture today. This was definitely cancel culture where he was being arrested because of the words that he would say. Now, apparently he had a mom and an aunt who was very much into the business, and he definitely got his vernacular vocabulary from them. His Valerie Perrine, she liked to have fun, especially with the other girls. But then it shows his hypocrisy, because he liked to fool around as well and have sex with other people as well. But he would look down upon her because, I don't know, because she was doing it or because she's doing it with other girls. Then it will cut to him doing a monologue about the D to the Y, K-E's. And no, I'm not saying the words because I just don't want to get into it with anybody. But about, the censure of offensive words and those were the more interesting parts. But I gotta say, while I saw this film, it didn't feel like I learned anything about Lenny Bruce. As dumb as that may sound. Because, the movie makes it seem as if he was, after his kid was born, and then it'll cut to, then his wife was a junkie. But we don't really see how his wife became a junkie, what started her on that path, and then all of a sudden she's going to jail. Then all of a sudden he's going to be the caregiver of the kid. And apparently if you look at the real life Lenny Bruce, he wasn't that much of a great caregiver. In fact, I think either a grandmother or someone else took care of the kid more so. Some other caregiver, not really the father. So a lot of biopics is stretching the truth. And like I say, I didn't really get a sense of why he became this way in terms of why he started to speak more blue, why he decided to push the envelope, what this means to him, and why he's so adamant about it, how he really got into drugs, that slippery slope of getting more and more into the deeper despair of addiction. It might have been more of a typical flow to do it this way being what I would have preferred, which is a more linear fashion. Yeah, that might have been more typical, but then I would have actually learned more about the guy and who he was and what his flow was, what his frame of mind was. At this point, then he's at this point, he's at this point. Because it's so topsy-turvy, and then He'll go into an interview with someone close to him that didn't really say a whole lot depth-wise about the person. So I would say Dustin Hoffman did a good job. If you look up clits, if you look up clits, you're looking at the wrong fucking video. If you look up clips, not clits, clips of Lenny Bruce, and you look at Dustin Hoffman, you see he's doing a pretty decent enough job to get that same vibe as Lenny Bruce did. Now, some may not find his comedy funny, and I'll say I didn't find it the most hilarious, but there were some interesting pieces in there. Like him complaining about how this teacher was in trouble because he was gay and how that shouldn't matter. It's not like the kid came home and said, "Dad, I was at school, I spent 5 minutes on geography and 10 minutes on cocksucking." Or, you know what the worst thing you could say to anybody? "Fuck you, mister." That's weird because if I wanted to hurt you, I should say, "Unfuck you, mister." Because "fuck you" is really nice, man. As in, well, I guess it depends. If it's a woman saying, yeah, I mean, if it's a guy saying, like, I don't know, it'd be as much fun, but I kind of get the gist of what you're getting at, kind of. But at times it didn't really feel like I really got to know him as a person. And the inner demons and or lack thereof, or however the case may be. Other than he kept pushing to saying things, even though he would get in trouble, and he would get into courtrooms saying, "I have the right of doing things I'm doing, I have the right to say things I'm saying," and kind of making himself more and more into a martyr instead of being a little bit more loosey-goosey with the system, or playing with the system a bit, where give him a few breadcrumbs that'll help you last longer. And instead, he just wanted to push, no, what I'm doing is wrong. And as some would say, he believed in the justice system. He believed what he was doing was right, and he would be vindicated, he would be cleared. And it wasn't really the case. So I think it was actually nominated for 6 Oscars. I said 5. I think it was 6 it was nominated for, but it didn't win any. And you don't really hear anybody talk about this film. And again, it's in black and white photography, which I like. I thought that definitely gave a more striking look to the film because of the black and white photography. I think Dustin Hoffman does a good job. Valerie, she did fine as the character Honey. I didn't mind her. The other people, other characters you don't really get to know much of. Maybe a little bit of her mom, but there's not really a whole lot of other characters they get to know too much about. And again, because it's just playing with... Sometimes I was confused as to where we were. Just as a guy that didn't know much about Lenny Bruce, I'm like, where are we in timeline? I guess, okay, we're here in the 60s, but he's got a beard. No, at this point now he's got no beard, but then he has a beard here because it just wants to go all topsy-turvy with the timeline. I just think it made it more confusing than it needed to be. And I read up that apparently the director didn't even like Lenny Bruce. Because Dustin Hoffman, he had a hard time working with the director because Dustin Hoffman is saying, hey, can I do this with the character? Or should I do this with a certain walk? And pretty much Bob Fosse is, no, you just, whenever you do a role, you just dissolve yourself to a walk anyway and just do what I say. So pretty much he didn't want the actors, including Dustin Hoffman, to have freedom to play around with the characters. Like, nope, you do what I say. You do this, and that's it. Because he's a dance choreographer. Dance choreographers was like, no, you move here and you look here. And especially back to the day, is like they would literally just physically move people. No, you move here and you turn here and you move there. You do that exactly. And that's what Bob Fosse was known for. Which, granted, never. I don't think you should put your fucking hands on someone. I don't care when or where or how, unless you defend yourself in a fucking fight or defending a loved one. But for a fucking dance or a movie or whatever, you touch me, I'm gonna touch you back. And you ain't no like when I touch you. So I'm just saying. So I know the director and Dustin Hoffman did not get along that well. I think Bob Fosse wanted Cliff Gorman, which I think he was the guy in Night of the Juggler, which I can't wait for that to come out on 4K. I really look forward to that film. Because I like the film, I like to see it cleaned up. But anyway, I do think Dustin Hoffman does a good performance. The monologues that he showcases as Lenny Bruce are interesting to watch. To see kind of the early stages of pushing the shot stand-up comedian envelope of what you can and can't talk about. Because when he got in trouble for saying cock sucking, and the thing I mentioned, that like the teachers, when the kid came home for school, is that like the teacher said, okay, you're going to study 5 minutes of geography and 10 minutes of cock sucking. He got in trouble. He got in jail for that. In deep shit. So then he's doing another act, and instead of saying cock sucking, it's blah blah blah. Did you blah blah blah? Did you blah blah blah? And it's just interesting how you look at his act, a good chunk of it you just see happening with comedians typical in the 70s and the 80s. I think even Rodney Dangerfield did an interview and he mentioned that. But he died fairly young. He died, I think, in his 40s or so. And like in the later stages of his career, apparently he would just, at least the way this film puts it, is that he would like read trial transcripts that he went through, and he would be like in a hobo trench coat and one sock, and people were there to laugh. They weren't there to be lectured. And that's the thing. If you're doing a comedy act, do you want to be lectured? Do you want to be told, like, this is the politics and this is right and wrong? And you have to read trial transcripts. Like, people want to hear jokes. They want to hear, satiric, perhaps, element of something that happened. And not just you reading your trial transcripts. I kind of forgot that, it's supposed to be a comedian, not some lecturer about free speech. This martyr. And I think there's interesting stuff in here. That's why I honestly wish for like either a different script, different director that would have told in a much more linear fashion so I could get like the full gist of who this guy was. Because apparently this guy was in the military. They don't say it in the movie. Apparently this guy was in a few like smaller budgeted films. Not in the movie. So I don't know if this is really the right picture to really tell the full story of Lenny Bruce. Maybe some... And also that there was some other, you looked at it, some other like darker elements to the guy that they kind of skimp. And, could have told a little bit more darker, deeper story. So, yeah, as is. I will say, at the very least, Dustin Hoffman did a good job and got me to learn a little bit more about Lenny Bruce. But nowadays, I'm sure most people don't even know who the fuck Lenny Bruce is. I didn't know. I definitely didn't know as a kid, and I barely knew in my teens and, with the age of the internet. So there you go. I was surprised that this was nominated for so many damn Oscars. But I guess it's not a perfect picture, and I mean, it's better than Emilia Perez. Fucked a little better, but yeah. I just wish the stretcher gave way to learning more about the man himself. But maybe the director was going for, I'm going to tell you as much of the man as I want through most of his monologues. Because the other stuff is just, oh, there's a car crash, and then he kind of cheats on his wife, who was in a hospital with a car crash. And he's like flirting or cheating on his wife. Or tries to get his wife into a threesome with another girl, and then kind of berates her for it. Which some say that threesome never happened, and that was all made up. I don't know. In fact, if you look at like the commentary for the film, they mention that supposedly the director only did the film because it had that threesome. I'm like, dude, if just go pay some two girls, some hookers, and have a fucking threesome at home. You're a hooker, you're a pepper. Would you like to be a pepper too? Suck on my pepper and go home and have a bone pick to put in her, and then have a coke in a smile and shut the fuck up, Bob Fosse. There you go. You want a threesome goddamn badly, just do it. As Shia LaBeouf would say, just do it. As Nike would say, just do it. Anyway, those are my rambling thoughts on Lenny. Not Lenny and Carl from fucking Simpsons, but... With that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye for now.